I'm sorry, but room service isn't available for your type of reservation. The words crackle through the phone line at 9:47 p.m. as Marcus Chin sits in the presidential suite of the Oceanview Regency Hotel, one of Miami's most exclusive luxury properties. He's just flown in from Singapore, exhausted from 18 hours of travel, looking forward to a simple meal before tomorrow's board meetings. The voice belongs to Amanda Pierce, night shift room service coordinator. 42 years old, 15 years at the Regency, and absolutely certain she knows who deserves five-star service and who doesn't. Marcus pauses, phone pressed to his ear, processing what he just heard. I'm sorry, what do you mean by my type of reservation? Amanda's laugh is sharp, condescending. Sir, I can see from your booking that you used reward points for this stay. Our premium room service menu is reserved for guests who pay full rate. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable ordering delivery from outside the hotel? Marcus glances around the $4,500 per night presidential suite with its ocean views, marble bathroom, and private terrace. He'd specifically requested this room for its privacy during his undercover assessment of the property. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, Marcus says calmly, already pulling out his phone to document the conversation. I am the supervisor for this shift, Amanda replies, her voice dripping with false politeness. And I'm simply explaining our policies. I'm sure someone in your situation understands that luxury hospitality has standards to maintain. Marcus Chin is 36 years old, the founder and CEO of Chin Global Hospitality, a $6.3 billion hotel empire spanning 47 countries. He's also the secret new owner of the Oceanview Regency, having completed the acquisition through shell companies just 72 hours ago. But Amanda Pierce doesn't know any of that. She sees a guest name that sounds Asian, a reservation booked with points instead of cash, and assumes she's dealing with someone trying to access luxury they can't afford. Before we continue, let's connect. What time is it where you're watching this right now? And where are you tuning in from? Drop your city, country, and the current time in the comments below. Let's see how far this story reaches across the world. Asterisk asterisk. I'd like to order the filet mignon medium rare with the seasonal vegetables, Marcus continues, ignoring her implications. And the lobster bisque to start. Amanda's sigh is theatrical, designed to communicate her annoyance. Sir, as I explained, that menu isn't available for your reservation type. I can offer you our alternate options. We have a very nice chicken sandwich or perhaps some pasta. The alternate options. Code for the menu we give people we don't think deserve our best. Marcus has encountered this pattern dozens of times during his undercover assessments of luxury properties. The subtle downgrades. The convenient policy exceptions. The way staff determine worthiness based on names, appearances, and assumptions about who belongs in exclusive spaces. Can you explain the policy that determines which guests can access which menu items? Marcus asks, his voice remaining perfectly professional as he records the call. It's based on rate codes and booking channels, Amanda replies smoothly, clearly comfortable with this script. Full-rate reservations receive full menu access. Discounted bookings, reward stays, and certain other categories are limited to our standard offerings. And who determines these categories? Hotel management, of course. Amanda's tone suggests she thinks Marcus is stupid for asking. We have to maintain standards. I'm sure you understand. Through his suite's floor-to-ceiling windows, Marcus can see the glittering Miami coastline. The Oceanview Regency sits on 8 acres of prime beachfront property, commanding premium prices and catering to celebrities, executives, and old money families who've vacationed here for generations. It's also the subject of 17 discrimination complaints filed with the Florida Commission on Human Relations over the past 3 years. Complaints that were settled quietly, buried by corporate lawyers, and never addressed systemically. Until now. I'll try one more time, Marcus says slowly. I'm a guest in the presidential suite. I'm requesting dinner from your room service menu. Can you fulfill that request? Amanda's response is final, dismissive. Sir, I've explained our policy. If you're unhappy with the options available to you, perhaps you should consider whether this property meets your needs. There are several more appropriate hotels in the area that might be a better fit. The implication hangs in the air like toxic smoke. You don't belong here. Go somewhere else. Somewhere for people like you. Marcus thanks her politely and ends the call. Then he makes 3 other calls that will change everything. The first goes to his chief operating officer, Sarah Martinez, who's been monitoring the undercover assessment remotely. Sarah, I need you to activate Protocol 7. Sarah's sharp intake of breath is audible. Protocol 7 is Chin Global's nuclear option. Complete property shutdown pending investigation of systemic discrimination. Marcus, are you certain? That's going to make national news within hours. I'm certain. Amanda Pierce just denied me room service in the presidential suite and suggested I find a more appropriate hotel. I want full documentation ready within the hour. His second call goes to the hotel's corporate office, specifically to Regional Director Thomas Bradley, who sold Marcus the property 3 days ago but hasn't announced the ownership change to staff. Thomas, it's Marcus Chin. We have a situation at Ocean View Regency that requires immediate intervention. Thomas Bradley, 63 years old and deeply invested in preserving his corporate reputation, listens with growing horror as Marcus describes the room service denial. Marcus, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Thomas, this is the 18th documented incident at this property in 3 years. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a pattern. And it ends tonight. The third call goes to Marcus's head of security, James Rodriguez, former FBI agent and expert in documenting workplace discrimination. James, I need you at the Ocean View Regency within 30 minutes. Bring recording equipment and legal documentation. We're shutting this down. Marcus walks to the suite's minibar and pours himself a scotch, not because he needs it, but because the ritual helps him process the familiar sting of discrimination. The assumption that his Asian name, his points-based booking, his very existence in this space is somehow fraudulent or undeserving. His phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. Protocol 7 activated. Legal team en route. Media briefing prepared. Are we going public immediately or after internal investigation? Marcus types back. Immediately. This story goes live in 1 hour. He knows what's coming. The media circus, the corporate panic, the inevitable backlash from people who claim he's overreacting. But Marcus Chin didn't build a $6.3 billion empire by accepting discrimination quietly. At 10:15 p.m. his suite phone rings. It's Amanda Pierce again, her voice now carrying a hint of uncertainty. Mr. Chin? I've been informed by management that there may have been a miscommunication about your room service request. We'd be happy to accommodate your original order. Marcus's smile is cold. What changed, Amanda? I'm not sure what you mean, sir. 15 minutes ago, you told me I should find a more appropriate hotel. Now you're happy to serve me. What information did you receive that changed your assessment? Silence. Then, nervously, I was just following standard protocol, sir. I didn't mean to imply. Yes, you did. You meant to imply that I don't belong here. That my reservation, my presence, my money isn't good enough for your establishment. And now someone has informed you that might be a problem, and you're attempting damage control. Sir, if I offended you, I apologize. Sometimes our policies can seem. Amanda, I'm not interested in your apology. I'm interested in accountability. And you're about to learn the difference. He hangs up before she can respond. By 10:45 p.m., the Ocean View Regency's executive team is in emergency session. General Manager Robert Whitmore, 58, has been pulled from a charity gala to deal with the crisis. He sits in his office reviewing the complaint file that Sarah Martinez emailed to corporate exactly 11 minutes ago. This can't be right, Robert mutters, scrolling through documented incidents. 17 complaints? Why wasn't I informed? His Director of Human Resources, Linda Morrison, shifts uncomfortably. Sir, those complaints were handled through corporate legal settlements and NDAs. We were instructed not to involve property management to avoid complications. Complications. Robert's face reddens. We paid out how much in settlements? $680,000 over 3 years. The number hits like a physical blow. Nearly $750,000 spent silencing discrimination victims rather than addressing the underlying culture. And now one of those victims is Marcus Chin, CEO of Chin Global Hospitality. The man who owns this property as of 72 hours ago. Linda's face goes pale. He owns? We reported to corporate that. Corporate facilitated the sale through intermediaries specifically so Chin could conduct undercover assessments. And guess what he found? Robert pulls up his email to find Sarah Martinez's legal notification. Notice of Protocol 7 implementation. Immediate property shutdown pending discrimination investigation. He's shutting us down, Robert whispers. He's actually shutting down the entire hotel. At 11 p.m., Marcus descends from the presidential suite to the lobby where James Rodriguez has set up a mobile command center. Cameras, recording equipment, and legal documentation spread across a conference table typically used for wedding planning. The night shift staff watches nervously as their new reality unfolds. Some recognize Marcus from business publications. Others are still trying to understand why their general manager is pacing frantically while on the phone with corporate lawyers. Amanda Pierce stands near the room service office, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. She's received 3 phone calls in the past hour, from HR, from corporate, and from her own manager, all asking variations of the same panicked question. What did you say to him? Marcus approaches her directly, James Rodriguez filming everything with explicit consent notices posted throughout the lobby. Amanda, I'd like to discuss our earlier conversation about room service policies. Amanda's hands shake. Mr. Chin, I sincerely apologize for any confusion. I was simply trying to. You were trying to deny me service based on assumptions about my worthiness. Let's be precise about what happened. Marcus pulls out his phone, playing the recorded conversation for the gathered staff and James's cameras. Amanda's voice fills the lobby. Room service isn't available for your type of reservation. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable ordering delivery? Someone in your situation. More appropriate hotels in the area? The coded language sounds even worse played publicly. Staff members exchange uncomfortable glances. Some recognize the pattern from their own experiences. Amanda, how many other guests have you denied service to using similar reasoning? Marcus asks. I don't know what you mean. Let me help you remember. James Rodriguez pulls up documentation on his tablet. We've reviewed your employment records. In the past 18 months, you've flagged 47 room service requests as inappropriate for guest category. Would you like to guess the demographic breakdown of those 47 guests? Amanda says nothing, her silence an admission. James continues, 42 were guests with Asian, Middle Eastern, or Latino names. 3 were Black. 2 were European but had booked through discount travel sites. 0 were white American guests who booked at full rate. Would you call that a coincidence? The lobby falls silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of ocean waves. Marcus addresses the assembled staff. This isn't just about Amanda. This is about a system that trained her to discriminate, rewarded her for maintaining standards, and protected her when victims complained. That system ends tonight. Robert Whitmore approaches hesitantly. Mr. Chin, I understand you're upset, but surely we can resolve this internally without. Without what, Robert? Without exposing the truth? Without accountability? Your property has paid $680,000 in discrimination settlements in 3 years. You've created a hostile environment for employees and guests of color. And when I experienced that discrimination firsthand, your staff suggested I find a more appropriate hotel. Marcus's voice remains calm, but steel underlies every word. This hotel will close for a minimum of 90 days. Every employee will undergo mandatory bias training. Those found to have engaged in discrimination will be terminated. And every single one of those 17 complaints will be revisited with offers to void the NDAs and speak publicly. The implications crash over the assembled staff like a tsunami. Closure means no income. Investigation means scrutiny. Accountability means consequences. Amanda Pierce begins crying, finally understanding that her comfortable world of consequence-free racism has ended. But Marcus isn't finished. The real revelations are just beginning. If you can't stand employees like Amanda who use policy as a weapon to discriminate, hit that subscribe button right now. Only racists and discriminatory staff won't subscribe. Show that coded language and fake policies can't hide prejudice anymore. Marcus walks through the Oceanview Regency's pristine lobby, noting architectural details that will soon become evidence in discrimination lawsuits. The Italian marble floors. The Austrian crystal chandeliers. The original artwork curated to project old money exclusivity. Beautiful surfaces hiding ugly systems. James Rodriguez sets up interview stations in the hotel's business center, preparing to document statements from current and former employees who've witnessed or experienced the discriminatory culture. The first volunteer is Miguel Santos, a 31-year-old bellman who's worked at the property for 7 years. His testimony unfolds like a horror story told in corporate language. I was told explicitly during training that certain guests require enhanced attention, while others need standard protocol, Miguel explains to James's camera. Enhanced attention meant white guests, especially those with luxury vehicles or designer luggage. Standard protocol meant everyone else, particularly minorities. Who provided this training? James asks. Amanda Pierce and the former front desk manager, Susan Crawford. They called it reading the room and understanding our clientele. But it was racism. We all knew it. More employees come forward, emboldened by Marcus's presence and the promise of protection from retaliation. Gabriela Martinez, a housekeeper for 9 years, describes how supervisors assigned the best shifts and sections based on which employees would serve the preferred guests most enthusiastically. If you treated everyone equally, you got the worst schedules. The early mornings, the turn-down services, the rooms farthest from supplies. They punished you for not discriminating. David Kim, a former concierge, explains how he was fired for treating an Asian family with the same courtesy he showed white guests. They spent $18,000 on a week-long stay, but because they asked questions about local restaurants instead of fine dining, Amanda complained that I was wasting premium service on inappropriate clients. I was terminated 2 weeks later for cultural misalignment with hotel values. The documentation builds systematically. James's cameras capture testimony after testimony, each one revealing another layer of the discriminatory infrastructure. By midnight, Marcus has enough evidence to file criminal charges, civil rights lawsuits, and regulatory complaints that will reshape Florida's hospitality industry. Robert Whitmore attempts one more intervention, approaching Marcus in the business center with desperate energy. Mr. Chen, I've spoken with corporate. We're prepared to offer a comprehensive settlement, significant compensation, immediate policy changes, and personal apologies from everyone involved. Marcus doesn't look up from the testimony transcripts he's reviewing. Robert, I don't want your money or apologies. I want accountability. We can terminate Amanda immediately. We'll issue public statements condemning discrimination. Whatever you need. What I need, Marcus interrupts, finally meeting Robert's eyes, is for you to understand that this isn't about one employee. You've systematically discriminated against guests and employees for years. Terminating Amanda doesn't address the supervisors who trained her, the executives who protected her, or the culture that rewarded her behavior. Robert's desperation increases. Then tell me what will satisfy you. What do we need to do? Marcus stands, walking to the windows overlooking the darkened beach. You need to close this hotel, Robert. Not for 90 days. Indefinitely. You need to conduct a complete cultural audit with independent oversight. You need to void every NDA and compensate victims fairly. You need to terminate every manager who enabled this system. And you need to accept that some stains don't wash out. You're talking about destroying this property's reputation permanently. No, Robert. Amanda did that when she told me to find a more appropriate hotel. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. At 1:17 a.m., Sarah Martinez arrives from the Miami airport with Chen Global's complete legal team. 6 attorneys, 2 PR specialists, and a crisis management consultant who's handled 3 similar cases for Marcus. They commandeer the hotel's largest conference room, spreading documents across tables and preparing for the media storm that will break with sunrise. Sarah briefs Marcus on the external situation. We've embargoed the story until 6 a.m., but leaks are already starting. TMZ has footage of you in the lobby. Business Insider is preparing a piece on Chen Global's acquisition. And 17 former discrimination victims have already contacted us asking if their NDAs are actually void. Tell them yes, Marcus replies immediately. Every NDA signed by this property is void as of tonight. We'll compensate them for the original settlement amount plus additional damages, and they're free to speak publicly. Marcus, that's going to cost. I don't care. They deserved to be heard years ago. Now they will be. The legal team begins processing the voided NDAs, each one representing a victim who was silenced by money and legal threats. Names emerge from the files like ghosts returning to haunt their tormentors. Patricia Wong denied service at the hotel restaurant in 2021 and told the establishment catered to a different demographic. James Rodriguez, no relation to Marcus's security chief, refused entry to the hotel pool in 2022 because his appearance might make other guests uncomfortable. Aisha Johnson, a former front desk clerk, terminated in 2020 after complaining about Amanda Pierce's instructions to screen minority guests more carefully for credit card fraud. Each story follows the same pattern. Discrimination disguised as policy. Complaints buried by settlements. Victims silenced by NDAs. Until tonight. At 2:30 a.m., Marcus receives a call from Thomas Bradley, the regional director who sold him the property, now in full panic mode. "Marcus, I'm begging you to reconsider this approach. The publicity will damage the entire brand, not just this one property. Think about your investment." "Thomas, I knew what I was buying. I purchased this property specifically because of its discrimination record. The 18 complaints weren't a bug in my acquisition analysis. They were the feature." You bought this hotel to shut it down?" "I bought it to transform it. But transformation requires destruction of the existing culture first. You can't renovate a building with a rotted foundation. You have to tear it down and rebuild." Thomas's voice drops to a whisper. "You're going to destroy careers, Marcus. People's livelihoods. Families depend on these jobs." "And whose fault is that, Thomas? I didn't create the discriminatory culture. I didn't bury the complaints. I didn't pay $680,000 to silence victims. Your management team did that. I'm just refusing to protect them from the consequences." The call ends with Thomas's defeated silence. At 3:45 a.m., Amanda Pierce makes one final attempt to salvage her career. She appears in the business center where Marcus and his team are working, her eyes red from crying, her voice breaking with desperation. "Mr. Chin, please. I have 2 kids. I've worked here for 15 years. This job is everything to me." Marcus looks up from his laptop, his expression neutral. "Amanda, you told me to find a more appropriate hotel. You've denied service to 47 guests based on racial assumptions. You've created a hostile environment for minority employees. And you did all of this while collecting a salary and benefits. Your children's needs don't erase your victims' pain. I was just following the training I received. The policies I was taught. I didn't know. You knew exactly what you were doing. You performed discrimination comfortably because you thought there would be no consequences. You were wrong." Amanda's final plea is desperate and revealing. "But I never used slurs. I never said anything explicitly racist. I was always professional." Marcus's response cuts to the bone. "Amanda, you used policy as a weapon and professionalism as camouflage. That's not better than explicit racism. It's more insidious because it's harder to prove and easier to deny. But tonight, with recordings and witnesses and documentation, we've proven it. And now you face consequences." She leaves the business center in tears, her 15-year career ending in the same lobby where she wielded power just hours earlier. At 5 a.m., as Miami sunrise begins painting the sky orange and pink, Marcus stands on the presidential suite's terrace overlooking the ocean. His phone buzzes with updates. The story will break in 1 hour. 17 victims have confirmed they want to speak publicly. CNN has requested an exclusive interview. The Florida Commission on Human Relations has opened an immediate investigation. Sarah joins him on the terrace, 2 coffees in hand. "You know this is going to be brutal, right? They'll call you vindictive, claim you're overreacting, say you're weaponizing your wealth for personal revenge." Marcus accepts the coffee with a tired smile. "Let them. I've been called worse by people with less justification. The evidence speaks for itself. The hotel industry is going to fight back hard. This sets a precedent they can't afford, that undercover assessments and public accountability are acceptable strategies." Good. Maybe it's time they learned that discrimination has costs they can't settle with NDAs and silence. They watch the sunrise together, knowing that when that sun fully rises, the hospitality industry will face its biggest reckoning in decades. At 6 a.m. the embargo lifts. CNN breaks the story first. Billionaire CEO denied room service at his own hotel. Property shut down hours later. Within minutes, every major news network picks it up. Social media explodes with hashtag OceanView accountability trending nationally. The footage James Rodriguez captured, Amanda's voice denying service, Miguel's testimony about discriminatory training, Marcus's calm confrontation, goes viral across platforms. By 7 a.m., the Oceanview Regency's lobby is surrounded by news vans, protesters supporting Marcus, and hospitality workers sharing their own discrimination stories. Amanda Pierce's name trends on Twitter, her LinkedIn profile becoming a case study in career destruction. Robert Whitmore issues a statement taking full responsibility and announcing his resignation. But the real story is just beginning. Because Marcus Chen isn't just shutting down one hotel. He's dismantling an entire industry's comfortable acceptance of discrimination disguised as exclusivity. And Amanda Pierce's 17-year career of coded racism is about to become a template for accountability that will transform luxury hospitality forever. The phone call that started at 9:47 p.m. with room service isn't available for your type has become a revolution by dawn. By 7:30 a.m., Amanda Pierce's name is trending in 17 countries. The hashtag room service racism dominates Twitter with 847,000 mentions. TikTok users have created reaction videos to the audio recording of Amanda's discriminatory phone call, each one garnering millions of views. Instagram influencers who've stayed at the Oceanview Regency are posting their own experiences with selective service. Marcus sits in the hotel's executive conference room watching the digital wildfire spread across multiple monitors. Sarah Martinez coordinates media responses while James Rodriguez continues documenting employee testimonies. CNN's morning anchor delivers the story with barely concealed outrage. Billionaire hospitality CEO Marcus Chen was denied room service at his own hotel hours after completing its purchase. The reason? Staff assumed his Asian name and points-based reservation meant he didn't deserve luxury service. What happened next has the entire hotel industry scrambling. The footage plays on loop. Amanda's voice. Room service isn't available for your type of reservation. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable ordering delivery? Someone in your situation. Social media reaction is swift and brutal. At Hospitality Worker, I've worked hotels for 12 years. We all know what your type of reservation means. It's code for, you don't look like our preferred guests. Glad someone finally exposed it. At Civil Rights Lawyer, the fact that they paid $680,000 in settlements and still didn't change their practices tells you everything. Discrimination was cheaper than dignity. At Travel Blogger, I stayed at Oceanview Regency last year. As a black woman, I was randomly selected for additional ID verification 3 times. White guests walked past security without a glance. This isn't surprising. The Miami Herald runs an investigative piece by 8 a.m., having obtained leaked documents from former employees. The headline devastates, Culture of Discrimination, Inside the Oceanview Regency's Systematic Racism. The article details the enhanced attention versus standard protocol training that Miguel Santos described. It includes internal emails from managers discussing how to maintain our demographic standards and preserve the property's exclusive character. One email from 2021 sent by former front desk manager Susan Crawford to Amanda Pierce is particularly damning. If guests don't fit our target profile, you know what I mean, find reasons to suggest alternative properties. We can't legally refuse service, but we can make the experience uncomfortable enough that they don't return. By 8:15 a.m., the Oceanview Regency's parent company, Prestige Hospitality International, calls an emergency board meeting. CEO Gerald Hartman, 67, watches his company's stock price plummet 12% in pre-market trading. How did we not know about this? Gerald demands of his executive team via video conference. Linda Morrison, the property's HR director, provides the uncomfortable answer. Sir, we did know. Legal settled 17 complaints over 3 years. But corporate counsel advised handling them quietly to avoid publicity and protect the brand. Protect the brand? Gerald's voice rises. We paid $680,000 to silence victims, and now we're facing a national scandal that's erased $340 million in market capitalization in 2 hours. How is that protecting anything? Thomas Bradley, the regional director who sold Marcus the property, speaks carefully. Sir, Mr. Chen specifically targeted this acquisition because of the discrimination complaints. He conducted an undercover assessment and documented everything. This was a planned operation. The board falls silent, processing the implications. Marcus Chen didn't stumble into discrimination. He deliberately exposed it with the precision of a surgeon excising cancer. "Get me Chin on the phone," Gerald orders. "Now." At 8:47 a.m., Marcus accepts Gerald Hartman's call on speakerphone with Sarah Martinez and his legal team present. "Mr. Chin, this is Gerald Hartman. I'd like to discuss a resolution to this situation that benefits everyone involved." Marcus's response is calm and unyielding. "Gerald, the only resolution I'm interested in is complete accountability. Your company systematically discriminated against guests and employees for years, then used NDAs to hide it. That ends today. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation, public apologies, immediate policy reforms. I don't want your money, Gerald. I want transparency. Every one of those 17 NDAs is void as of this morning. Every victim can speak publicly without financial penalty. And I'm personally funding their legal representation if they choose to sue." Gerald's voice tightens. "That's going to destroy careers, Marcus. Good people who made mistakes. Good people don't make the same discriminatory mistake 17 times over 3 years. Good people don't train employees to screen guests by race. Good people don't pay $680,000 to silence victims instead of fixing the culture that created them." Sarah passes Marcus a tablet showing real-time updates. 6 more Prestige Hospitality properties are now facing discrimination allegations as employees feel empowered to speak up. "Your company has a choice," Marcus continues. "Full cooperation with independent investigations, complete transparency with findings, and genuine cultural transformation. Or I take everything I've documented to the Justice Department Civil Rights Division and let federal prosecutors handle it." The threat lands like a bomb. Federal investigation means criminal exposure, not just civil settlements. "What do you want from us?" Gerald asks, defeat creeping into his voice. "I want Amanda Pierce, Robert Whitmore, Linda Morrison, and every manager who enabled this system terminated immediately. I want independent auditors reviewing all your properties for similar patterns. I want a $5 million fund for victim compensation beyond the original settlements. And I want it announced publicly by noon today." The call ends with Gerald's reluctant agreement. At 9:30 a.m., the terminations begin. Amanda Pierce receives her dismissal via email while still in the hotel lobby, having spent the night unable to leave due to the media circus outside. Her 15-year career ends with a single paragraph. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated for cause due to discriminatory conduct, policy violations, and actions detrimental to company reputation. No severance. No references. No appeals." She reads it 3 times, her hands shaking, unable to process that the comfortable world where her racism was rewarded has completely collapsed. Robert Whitmore, the general manager, receives identical notification. So does Linda Morrison, HR director. And Susan Crawford, the former front desk manager who wrote those damning emails. By 10 a.m., 11 employees across the Ocean View Regency have been terminated for documented discrimination. Their names are released publicly as part of Prestige Hospitality's transparency agreement. The hotel industry reacts with shock and panic. Executive group chats explode with urgent messages. "Chin is setting a precedent we can't survive. Undercover assessments could expose us all. We need to audit our policies immediately before we're next. Hit that like button if you believe Amanda Pierce and every manager who enabled her deserve to lose their careers. Show that just following policy is never an excuse for racism. Only people who defend discriminatory staff scroll past without engaging." At 10:45 a.m., the real victims begin speaking publicly for the first time. Patricia Wong, the guest denied restaurant service in 2021, appears on Good Morning America via satellite from her home in San Francisco. Her testimony is powerful and painful. "They told me the restaurant was fully booked, even though I could see empty tables through the windows," Patricia explains, her voice steady despite visible emotion. "When I mentioned I was staying in the hotel, the hostess said the restaurant catered to a different demographic and suggested I try the food court at a nearby mall. The host asks the question millions are wondering, why did you accept the settlement and NDA instead of going public? Patricia's answer exposes the system's cruelty. They offered me $35,000 and said if I refused, they'd fight me in court for years. I'm a small business owner. I couldn't afford protracted litigation. The NDA felt like being paid to accept my own humiliation. And now that Marcus Chin has voided that NDA? Now I want everyone to know that luxury hospitality has been using money to silence discrimination victims for decades. Marcus didn't just expose one hotel, he exposed an entire industry's dirty secret. The interview goes viral immediately. #SilenceNoMore begins trending as other victims find courage to speak. James Rodriguez, the former pool victim, not Marcus's security chief, appears on CNN at 11:30 a.m., describing how security removed him from the hotel pool in 2022. "I'm a software engineer. I was staying there for a tech conference. I went to the pool wearing appropriate swim attire, and within 5 minutes, security approached me saying multiple guests had expressed concerns about my presence." "What did they mean by that?" the anchor asks, though the implication is clear. "They meant I'm black and the white families at the pool were uncomfortable." Security never said that explicitly, but when I asked which pool rules I'd violated, they couldn't name any. They just kept saying my presence was creating an uncomfortable environment. "Did you complain to management?" "I filed a formal complaint. Robert Whitmore, the general manager who just got fired, personally handled my case. He offered me $45,000 to sign an NDA and accept that the incident was a mutual misunderstanding. I needed that money for my mother's medical bills. So I signed." James's voice breaks slightly. "I signed away my right to tell the truth because I couldn't afford justice. That's what these hotels count on, that we're desperate enough to be bought." By noon, 7 of the 17 NDA victims have appeared on national television. Each story follows the same pattern: discrimination disguised as policy, complaints buried with money, victims silenced by NDAs and power imbalances. Aisha Johnson, the former front desk clerk fired in 2020, provides the most damning testimony on MSNBC. "Amanda Pierce gave me explicit instructions to screen minority guests more carefully for credit card fraud. She said, people like that often use stolen cards or try to scam luxury hotels. When I refused and reported her to HR, I was terminated within 2 weeks for cultural misalignment." "Do you still have documentation of these instructions?" the host asks. Aisha pulls out her phone, displaying screenshots of text messages from Amanda. "Be extra careful with the Asian check-ins tonight. Verify everything. Those people will take advantage if you're not watching. I need you to flag any bookings that seem suspicious. You know what I mean." The texts are shown on screen, each one a digital record of casual racism from a supervisor to a subordinate employee. "I kept these for 3 years, Aisha explains, because I knew someday the truth would matter. I just never imagined it would be a billionaire CEO who finally made people listen." At 1 p.m., the Florida Commission on Human Relations announces a formal investigation into Prestige Hospitality International and the Ocean View Regency specifically. The statement is unprecedented in its scope. "We are examining whether systematic discrimination occurred at this property and potentially others in the company's portfolio. Initial evidence suggests patterns of bias in service delivery, employment practices, and customer treatment based on race, ethnicity, and national origin." Commissioner Maria Gonzalez, who leads the investigation, holds a press conference outside the shuttered hotel. "What we're seeing isn't isolated incidents. It's systematic discrimination enabled by corporate policies that prioritized profit and exclusivity over civil rights. The $680,000 in settlements should have triggered our oversight years ago, but NDAs prevented victims from reaching us. That changes today." She announces that the commission will review all discrimination settlements by Florida hospitality companies over the past 5 years, potentially voiding NDAs that prevented regulatory oversight. The announcement sends panic through the state's luxury hotel industry. If all discrimination NDAs are void, thousands of silenced victims could suddenly speak publicly. By 2 p.m., Marcus holds his first formal press conference in the Ocean View Regency's parking lot, the shuttered hotel providing a powerful backdrop. 50 reporters, cameras from every major network, and a crowd of supporters who've gathered to witness accountability create an electric atmosphere. "I'm here because Amanda Pierce thought she could deny me room service based on assumptions about my race and worthiness," Marcus begins, his voice carrying clearly across the packed parking lot. "She was wrong about my identity, but that's not the point. The point is that she felt comfortable making those assumptions because she'd done it 47 times before without consequences." He pauses, letting the number sink in. This hotel paid $680,000 to silence 17 discrimination victims in 3 years. They trained employees to provide enhanced attention to white guests and standard protocol to everyone else. They created a culture where racism was rewarded as maintaining standards and employees who resisted were terminated. A reporter asks the question dominating social media. Mr. Chen, critics say you're overreacting, that you're weaponizing your wealth for personal revenge. How do you respond? Marcus's answer is measured but firm. If documenting discrimination is weaponizing wealth, then yes, I'm guilty. If demanding accountability for systematic racism is overreacting, then I'll overreact every time. Because the alternative is accepting that luxury hospitality can discriminate with impunity as long as they're willing to pay settlements and silence victims. Another reporter, what's next for the Ocean View Regency? The property will remain closed for a minimum of 6 months while we conduct complete cultural transformation. Every policy will be reviewed by independent civil rights experts. Every employee will undergo intensive anti-bias training. Those found to have discriminated will not be rehired. And when we reopen, it will be as a model for inclusive luxury hospitality. Will you personally oversee this transformation? Yes. This isn't just about one hotel. Chen Global Hospitality will implement dignity audits across all our properties. We'll create industry standards for detecting and preventing discrimination. And we'll make sure that what happened to me, and the 17 victims before me, never happens again. The press conference footage dominates news cycles for the rest of the day. At 3:30 p.m., the legal proceedings begin. Marcus's attorney, Jennifer Reeves, files a massive civil rights lawsuit in federal court on behalf of all 17 voided NDA victims. The suit names Prestige Hospitality International, the Ocean View Regency, and 12 individual employees including Amanda Pierce and Robert Whitmore. The complaint is 247 pages of documented discrimination, including audio recordings of discriminatory service denials, text messages with racist language from supervisors, training materials instructing demographic screening, statistical analysis showing 89% of flagged guests were minorities, internal emails discussing how to maintain our preferred clientele, testimony from 43 employees describing the discriminatory culture. The lawsuit seeks $50 million in compensatory damages, $100 million in punitive damages, and permanent injunctions requiring independent oversight of all Prestige Hospitality properties. Legal experts immediately recognized the case as groundbreaking. Professor Angela Martinez from Harvard Law School appears on CNN to analyze the implications. This lawsuit doesn't just seek damages for individual victims. It demands systematic transformation of an entire company's culture. If Chen wins, it sets precedent that hotels can't hide discrimination behind settlements and NDAs. The financial exposure alone will force the industry to change. At 4 p.m., Amanda Pierce's lawyer, David Foster, holds a brief press conference attempting damage control. It backfires spectacularly. My client made an error in judgment during a stressful work situation, Foster claims. She followed training and policies she believed were appropriate. This has been blown completely out of proportion. Reporters interrupt with questions that demolish his narrative. Was it appropriate to tell 47 guests they should find more appropriate hotels? Was the training that instructed demographic screening an official company policy? How does your client explain the text messages telling employees to be extra careful with Asian guests? Foster stammers through non-answers before ending the press conference after just 7 minutes. The footage of his failed defense becomes social media comedy, with commentators mocking his attempt to portray systematic racism as a simple error in judgment. By 5 p.m., 3 more Prestige Hospitality properties faced discrimination lawsuits from emboldened victims who'd previously accepted NDAs. The Regency Boston reports 12 former employees alleging racial discrimination in hiring and promotion. The Ocean View San Diego faces complaints from 9 guests who were denied spa services or pool access based on race. The Prestige Miami Beach is sued by former housekeeping staff alleging they were assigned the worst rooms and schedules based on their Latino surnames. The pattern emerges clearly. What happened at the Ocean View Regency wasn't an isolated problem. It was corporate culture replicated across multiple properties. Comment, no more silence. if you stand with the 17 victims who were paid to hide their pain. Let's show that NDAs can't protect racist companies anymore. Only people who defend discrimination through silence won't comment. At 6 p.m., Prestige Hospitality's board holds another emergency session. This time, the decision is unanimous and swift. CEO Gerald Hartman is forced to resign, effective immediately. His statement is brief and hollow. I take full responsibility for the failures of oversight that allowed discriminatory practices to persist. I'm stepping down to allow new leadership to implement necessary reforms. The board appoints Marcus Chin as interim CEO of Prestige Hospitality International, giving him complete authority to restructure the company. The announcement stuns the hospitality industry. The victim of discrimination now controls the company that victimized him. Marcus accepts the role with clear conditions. I'll serve for 12 months to oversee complete cultural transformation. Every property will undergo dignity audits. Every complaint will be investigated independently. Every settlement will be reviewed. And discrimination will result in termination, not settlements. By 7 p.m., Amanda Pierce's personal reckoning accelerates beyond her terminated career. Her husband, David Pierce, files for divorce after seeing the viral footage and text messages. His statement to local media is brutal. I can't remain married to someone whose values are so fundamentally incompatible with basic human dignity. Our children deserve better role models. Her homeowners association receives complaints from neighbors who recognize her from the news. Several families with minority children express concern about having her in the community. Her LinkedIn profile is flooded with comments condemning her actions. Her personal social media accounts are bombarded with messages calling her out. She's forced to delete all her online presence, but screenshots preserve her discrimination forever. Amanda's fall from comfortable middle management racism to social pariah takes less than 12 hours. The woman who confidently discriminated 47 times now hides in her house, unemployable and unmarriageable, facing the consequences she never imagined possible. At 8:30 p.m., Marcus returns to the presidential suite where this all began less than 24 hours ago. The room service menu sits on the desk, a reminder of the phone call that triggered an industry-wide earthquake. He orders the filet mignon medium rare with seasonal vegetables and lobster bisque. This time, the order is fulfilled immediately by staff who now understand exactly who he is and what he represents. As Marcus eats dinner on the terrace overlooking the ocean, he reflects on the day's extraordinary events. 17 victims given voices. 11 discriminatory employees terminated. A federal lawsuit that will reshape hospitality law. An entire industry forced to confront its comfortable racism. Sarah Martinez joins him with updates that signal this is far from over. Marcus, we've received 43 new discrimination complaints about other Prestige properties in the past 6 hours. Hotels in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Dallas. Employees and guests are coming forward everywhere. How bad is it? Bad. We're looking at potentially hundreds of victims across the company. And 12 other hotel chains have contacted us preemptively, wanting to conduct dignity audits before they're exposed. Marcus processes the scope of what he's unleashed. One phone call about room service has become a reckoning that will transform luxury hospitality forever. Good, he says finally. Fear of exposure will do more to change industry culture than decades of regulations. His phone buzzes with a text from Patricia Wong, the first victim to speak publicly. Thank you for giving us our voices back. 24 hours ago, I was legally silenced. Tonight, I told my story on national television. That's power. Marcus replies, you always had your voice. I just removed the muzzle they paid you to wear. As night falls over Miami, the Ocean View Regency sits dark and empty, a monument to the consequences of discrimination disguised as luxury standards. Inside, evidence collection continues. James Rodriguez and his team document every policy manual, every training video, every email that reveals how racism was systematically embedded in the property's operations. The data they're collecting will become the foundation for the most comprehensive hospitality discrimination case in American legal history. Tomorrow, the legal battle intensifies. Depositions begin. More victims come forward. The media circus expands. But tonight, Marcus Chin sits in the presidential suite he was told he didn't deserve, having transformed a denied room service order into justice for 17 victims and accountability for an industry that thought discrimination was the price of exclusivity. Amanda Pierce's 15-year career of coded racism ended in one phone call. But the transformation Marcus is building will last generations. 3 months after the room service denial that shook the hospitality industry, the federal civil rights trial begins in Miami District Court. United States versus Prestige Hospitality International fills courtroom 6B beyond capacity. Judge Patricia Morrison, a black woman who spent 30 years on the bench, presides over proceedings that will redefine corporate accountability for discrimination. Marcus Chin sits in the front row, flanked by the 17 victims whose NDAs he voided. Their presence is strategic and powerful, a visual reminder that this isn't about legal abstractions. It's about real people who suffered real harm. Amanda Pierce sits at the defense table looking diminished. 3 months of unemployment, divorce proceedings, and social isolation have transformed her from the confident manager who denied Marcus room service into a hollow shell of her former self. Beside her sit Robert Whitmore, Linda Morrison, and Susan Crawford, all facing criminal charges for conspiracy to violate civil rights. Their expensive lawyers shuffle papers with barely concealed pessimism. Lead prosecutor Rebecca Chin, no relation to Marcus, delivers opening statements that silence the packed courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a simple question. Can luxury hotels discriminate based on race as long as they use coded language and pay victims to stay silent? She walks slowly past the jury box, making eye contact with each member. The defendants will claim they were following company policy and maintaining standards. But the evidence will show those policies were designed specifically to exclude people of color. Those standards were racist by design and profitable by intention. Rebecca clicks a remote. The courtroom screen displays Amanda's text messages to Aisha Johnson. Be extra careful with the Asian check-ins tonight. Verify everything. This is Amanda Pierce, night shift room service coordinator, instructing employees to racially profile guests. Notice the coded language. Be extra careful, verify everything. She never says discriminate against Asians, but her meaning is crystal clear. More messages appear. Those people will take advantage if you're not watching. Flag any bookings that seem suspicious. You know what I mean. Amanda Pierce sent 47 messages like this over 18 months. Every single one targeted minorities. 0 targeted white guests. That's not coincidence. That's conspiracy. Rebecca displays the training manual that Miguel Santos testified about. The section titled Clientele Assessment Protocol includes a checklist for frontline staff. Luxury vehicle? Code 4, do they look wealthy? Designer luggage? Code 4, do they fit our image? Professional demeanor? Code 4, do they act like our white guests? Appropriate attire? Code 4, are they dressed like we expect? Each criterion carries racial implications designed to screen out minorities while maintaining plausible deniability. This training manual was created by Susan Crawford, approved by Robert Whitmore, and implemented by Amanda Pierce. It instructed employees to judge guests based on subjective criteria that systematically disadvantaged people of color. The evidence mounts systematically. Statistical analysis showing 89% of flagged guests were minorities. Internal emails discussing demographic concerns. Settlement agreements with racial breakdowns that reveal a clear pattern. Rebecca's final opening salvo devastates the defense. The defendants paid $680,000 to silence 17 victims in 3 years. That's an average of 1 discrimination settlement every 65 days. At what point does a pattern become a policy? At what point do mistakes become crimes? The evidence will show that point was crossed years ago. Amanda's attorney, David Foster, attempts to create reasonable doubt during his opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, my client followed policies she was trained to implement. She made judgment calls based on operational guidelines provided by management. Yes, some of those calls were wrong, but mistakes aren't crimes. His argument rings hollow against the documented evidence of systematic discrimination. The prosecution's case unfolds over 2 weeks with devastating precision. Patricia Wong testifies about being denied restaurant service while empty tables sat visible through windows. Her voice remains steady as she describes the humiliation. The hostess looked me up and down, then said the restaurant catered to a different demographic. I asked what demographic that was. She said, "You'd be more comfortable elsewhere." I understood immediately, they didn't want Asians in their fine dining space. "What did you do?" Rebecca asks. "I filed a complaint. Robert Whitmore personally handled it. He offered me $35,000 to sign an NDA and accept that it was a mutual misunderstanding. I was a small business owner facing COVID losses. I needed that money. So I signed away my right to tell the truth." Her testimony brought several jurors to tears. James Rodriguez, the pool victim, describes his removal from hotel pool facilities with quiet dignity that contrasts sharply with the indignity he suffered. "Security told me, multiple guests expressed concerns about my presence. I was wearing appropriate swim attire, behaving appropriately, simply existing while black. That was enough to make white families uncomfortable, and the hotel chose to protect their comfort over my rights." "Did you complain to management?" "Yes. Linda Morrison from HR handled my case. She told me the hotel had a responsibility to ensure all guests feel comfortable, which apparently meant removing the one black person from the pool. She offered me $45,000 to sign an NDA and go away quietly." Aisha Johnson's testimony provides the most damning evidence of management complicity. "Amanda Pierce gave me explicit instructions to racially profile guests. When I refused and reported her to HR, Linda Morrison called me into her office. She said I was creating a hostile work environment by making discrimination allegations. 2 weeks later, I was fired for cultural misalignment." "Do you still have documentation of these instructions?" Aisha produces her phone, displaying the text messages that have already gone viral. But in the context of sworn testimony, they carry even more weight. "I kept these for 3 years because I knew the truth mattered. I just never imagined I'd get to tell it in federal court." The defense attempts to discredit witnesses through cross-examination, but Amanda's own documentation makes that impossible. David Foster questions Patricia Wong, "Isn't it possible the restaurant was genuinely fully booked?" Patricia's response is calm and devastating. "The reservation system shows 8 empty tables during the time I was denied service. I subpoenaed those records. Would you like to see them?" The courtroom stirs with murmurs. Patricia came prepared with evidence that destroys the defense's narrative. Foster tries a different approach with James Rodriguez. Perhaps other guests had legitimate concerns about pool capacity or safety? James's answer is backed by video evidence. The pool surveillance footage shows 6 people in a facility designed for 30. "Would you like to explain what safety concerns required removing specifically the one black guest?" Each cross-examination backfires, strengthening the prosecution's case rather than weakening it. The defense's only witnesses are character references who testify that Amanda, Robert, and Linda are good people who made mistakes. But their testimony crumbles under Rebecca's cross-examination. How many mistakes does it take before someone stops being a good person and becomes a systematic discriminator? Rebecca asks one character witness. 17? 47? How many victims are acceptable? The witness has no answer. On day 12 of the trial, Marcus takes the stand. His testimony is calm, methodical, and emotionally powerful. Rebecca guides him through the events of that night, starting with the initial room service call. "Describe your conversation with Amanda Pierce." Marcus's voice fills the courtroom with quiet authority. "I called to order dinner. Amanda immediately told me room service wasn't available for my type of reservation. When I asked what she meant, she explained that reward point bookings didn't qualify for premium service. What did you think she meant?" I knew exactly what she meant. She saw an Asian name on a points reservation and assumed I was someone trying to access luxury I couldn't afford. Her coded language, "your type, someone in your situation, more appropriate hotels," was designed to tell me I didn't belong without explicitly stating it was about race. "How did that make you feel?" Marcus pauses, choosing his words carefully. "Familiar. I've faced this kind of discrimination dozens of times. In boardrooms, restaurants, country clubs. But it never stops being painful. The assumption that my presence is fraudulent, that my success is suspicious, that my very existence in luxury spaces requires extraordinary justification." His testimony resonates with the jury, several of whom are people of color who recognize the experiences he describes. Rebecca presents Marcus's recording of the phone call. Amanda's voice fills the courtroom. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable ordering delivery from outside the hotel? Someone in your situation. More appropriate hotels in the area? What did you do after this call? I documented everything. I called my team. I activated Protocol 7, our procedure for shutting down properties with systematic discrimination. And I decided that Amanda Pierce and everyone who enabled her would finally face consequences. David Foster's cross-examination attempts to portray Marcus as vindictive, but it backfires spectacularly. Mr. Chin, isn't it true you purchased this hotel specifically to expose discrimination? Yes. So this was a setup? A trap. Marcus's response is measured but powerful. I purchased this property because 17 people complained about discrimination and were silenced with money. I conducted an undercover assessment to document what victims had been reporting for years. If providing evidence of crimes is a trap, then yes, I'm guilty. But you could have simply identified yourself and avoided this entire situation. Could I? Let me ask you something, Mr. Foster. Why should I have to prove my worthiness to receive basic service? Why should my title and wealth determine whether I'm treated with dignity? Every person deserves respect regardless of their identity or net worth. The courtroom erupts in applause. Judge Morrison gavels for order, but the impact is undeniable. Foster tries one more attack. Isn't this really about revenge? About using your wealth to destroy people's careers? Marcus leans forward, his voice carrying steel beneath the calm surface. This is about accountability. Amanda Pierce destroyed her own career by discriminating 47 times. Robert Whitmore destroyed his by burying complaints instead of addressing them. Linda Morrison destroyed hers by silencing victims and protecting discriminators. I simply made sure their actions had consequences. The prosecution rests after Marcus's testimony. The defense's case is brief and ineffective, consisting mainly of character witnesses who can't overcome the documentary evidence. Closing arguments take one day. Rebecca Chen's summation is a masterclass in prosecutorial rhetoric. The defendants want you to believe this was about maintaining standards and following policy. But let's be clear about what those standards were. White guests deserve luxury, everyone else deserves suspicion. Let's be honest about what those policies meant. Discriminate carefully enough to avoid explicit racism, but thoroughly enough to exclude minorities. She displays the statistical analysis one final time. 89% of flag guests were minorities. The probability of this occurring without racial bias is 0.0001%. In plain English, it's mathematically impossible that this wasn't discrimination. The defendants paid $680,000 to silence 17 victims. They trained employees to racially profile. They created a culture where discrimination was rewarded and resistance was punished. This isn't a civil disagreement, it's a criminal conspiracy to violate civil rights. Her final words resonate with moral authority. Your verdict will tell the entire hospitality industry whether discrimination with coded language is acceptable, whether companies can buy silence with settlements, whether victims will be heard or buried. Choose justice. If you believe Amanda Pierce, Robert Whitmore, and Linda Morrison deserve prison time for systematic racism disguised as policy, hit subscribe right now. Show that coded discrimination is still discrimination. Only people who defend racist standards won't subscribe. The jury deliberates for 7 hours and 43 minutes. When they return, the forewoman's voice is clear and certain. On the charge of conspiracy to violate civil rights, guilty. Amanda Pierce's face crumbles. Her mother, sitting in the gallery, begins crying. On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of authority, guilty. Robert Whitmore drops his head to the table, shoulders shaking. On the charge of wire fraud related to discriminatory settlements, guilty. Linda Morrison stares straight ahead, emotionless, already mentally gone. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. 4 guilty verdicts on all counts for all defendants. Judge Morrison sets sentencing for 2 weeks later, denying bail. The defendants are remanded to federal custody immediately as flight risks. As marshals lead them away in handcuffs, Amanda looks back at Marcus with desperate, pleading eyes. He meets her gaze with the same calm dignity he maintained during her phone call 3 months ago. No anger. No satisfaction. just the quiet certainty that justice has been served. The courthouse steps become a victory rally as the 17 victims emerge to address waiting media. Patricia Wong speaks for the group. For 3 years, I was paid to be silent about my humiliation. Today, a jury said my voice matters. That's not just my victory, it's victory for every person who's been discriminated against and told to accept it quietly. Social media explodes with #JusticeServed trending worldwide. The footage of Amanda, Robert, and Linda being led away in handcuffs becomes the most shared legal content of the year. Sentencing day arrives 2 weeks later with national media coverage. Judge Morrison has reviewed extensive pre-sentencing reports. The defendants' attorneys have filed desperate motions for leniency, citing their families, their previously clean records, their remorse. But Judge Morrison's reputation for fairness is matched only by her intolerance for discrimination. Her sentencing statement becomes legendary in civil rights law. Amanda Pierce, you systematically discriminated against 47 guests over 18 months. You trained employees to racially profile. You created a hostile environment for minority staff. You showed zero remorse until facing consequences. Amanda stands trembling, her expensive courtroom attire unable to hide her devastation. You are sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. You will complete 500 hours of community service with civil rights organizations and are permanently barred from hospitality industry employment. Amanda collapses. Her attorney catches her as she falls, but there's no comfort to offer. Robert Whitmore, as general manager, you enabled and protected this discriminatory system. You buried complaints, silenced victims with settlements, and chose profit over people. You are sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. Robert takes his sentence in defeated silence, already broken. Linda Morrison, you weaponized human resources to protect discriminators and punish victims. You terminated employees who reported racism and silenced those who complained. You are sentenced to 4.5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. Linda finally shows emotion, tears streaming down her face as reality settles. Susan Crawford, you created the training materials that instructed employees to discriminate. You are sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years supervised release. Judge Morrison addresses all defendants collectively for her final statement. You believed your coded language and settlement agreements would protect you from accountability. You were wrong. This court sends a clear message. Discrimination disguised as policy is still discrimination. Companies that silence victims with money will face criminal prosecution. And those who create systems of oppression will be held personally liable. The sentences send shockwaves through the hospitality industry. For the first time, corporate discrimination results in actual prison time for individual actors, not just civil settlements. Amanda Pierce's fall is complete and irreversible. Her 15-year career has become a 4-year prison sentence. Her marriage is over. Her social standing is destroyed. Her name is permanently associated with systematic racism. She serves her time at a minimum security federal facility in Florida, working in the prison laundry for 23 cents per hour. The woman who once controlled who received luxury service now takes orders from corrections officers who treat her with the same casual dismissal she showed her victims. Robert Whitmore serves at a different facility, his reputation as a hospitality executive replaced by his identity as convicted civil rights violator. His LinkedIn profile, once professionally polished, is deleted. His industry awards are returned. His legacy is defined entirely by his crimes. Linda Morrison and Susan Crawford serve their sentences at separate institutions, each one processing the reality that their complicity in discrimination has cost them everything. But the real transformation happens beyond individual punishments. 6 months after the trial, Marcus stands in the rebuilt lobby of what's now called the Chin Regency Miami. The property that Amanda Pierce once controlled through coded discrimination has been completely transformed. The Italian marble floors remain, but everything else has changed. The staff now reflects Miami's diversity. The front desk team includes employees who speak 7 languages. Security personnel have completed intensive anti-bias training. Management is majority-minority for the first time in the property's history. Miguel Santos, the bellman who first testified about discriminatory training, has been promoted to guest services manager. His office overlooks the lobby where he once felt powerless to challenge injustice. Mr. Chin, Miguel approaches with genuine warmth. Welcome back. Your usual suite is ready. The interaction feels natural, professional, respectful. Everything Amanda's regime lacked. The young couple who supported Marcus during the original incident visits for their anniversary, bringing friends who'd previously avoided luxury hotels due to discrimination fears. This feels different, the wife tells Marcus as they check in. Safe. Welcoming. Like we actually belong here. Marcus smiles. You always belonged here. We just had to remove the people who thought otherwise. The transformation extends throughout the property. The clientele assessment protocol training has been replaced by dignity standards that emphasize treating every guest with respect regardless of appearance or booking method. The discriminatory, enhanced attention versus standard protocol system has been abolished. Now every guest receives enhanced attention, and staff performance reviews measure inclusion rather than exclusion. Statistical tracking shows the results. Guest satisfaction among minorities has increased 94%. Employee retention has jumped from 34% to 87%. Revenue is up 41% as the property attracts guests who'd previously avoided it. But the Chin Regency Miami is just the beginning. Prestige Hospitality International has undergone complete transformation under Marcus's 12-month leadership as interim CEO. All 43 properties have implemented dignity audits, revealing discrimination problems at 19 locations. 87 employees across the company have been terminated for documented discrimination. 243 have completed intensive bias training. The company's settlement fund has grown to $12 million, compensating victims beyond their original NDAs. The broader industry has responded with panic and adaptation. 17 major hotel chains have implemented similar dignity audits preemptively, terrified of becoming the next viral discrimination scandal. Luxury hospitality trade associations have adopted new standards explicitly prohibiting coded discrimination. Insurance companies now require anti-bias training as a condition of coverage. Business schools teach the Ocean View Regency case as an example of how discrimination destroys value. Marcus's Chin Global Hospitality has become the industry leader in inclusive luxury. The company's Dignity First initiative has been adopted by 237 properties worldwide. Their employee satisfaction scores lead the industry. Their revenue growth consistently outperforms competitors. The metrics prove what Marcus has always known. Discrimination is expensive and dignity is profitable. 1 year after the room service denial that changed everything, Marcus returns to the presidential suite where it all began. The same suite where Amanda Pierce told him to order delivery and find a more appropriate hotel. The same room where he made the calls that triggered industry-wide transformation. He orders room service, filet mignon medium rare with seasonal vegetables and lobster bisque. The order is fulfilled within 20 minutes by staff who treat him with genuine hospitality, not performative deference. As Marcus eats dinner on the terrace overlooking the Miami coastline, he reflects on the journey from humiliation to transformation. Amanda Pierce is in her 3rd year of federal prison, her name synonymous with the consequences of coded racism. Robert Whitmore, Linda Morrison, and Susan Crawford served their sentences, their careers and reputations destroyed beyond repair. But more importantly, 17 victims have had their voices restored. 87 discriminatory employees have been removed from positions of power. 237 hotels have implemented dignity standards. Millions of travelers now experience hospitality without discrimination. Sarah Martinez joins Marcus on the terrace with champagne and updates on the broader impact. Marcus, 12 more hotel chains have contacted us about implementing dignity audits. The Florida legislature is considering a law banning discriminatory NDAs. And Harvard Business School wants to endow a chair in your name focused on ethical hospitality leadership. Marcus processes the scope of systemic change triggered by one phone call about room service. What about the victims? How are they doing? Thriving. Patricia Wong expanded her business and now speaks publicly about discrimination. James Rodriguez started a nonprofit helping discrimination victims navigate legal systems. Aisha Johnson is finishing her hospitality management degree and wants to work for Chin Global. The transformation extends beyond institutions to individual lives rebuilt and empowered. Marcus's phone buzzes with a text from Patricia Wong. 1 year ago today, I was legally silenced about my humiliation. Tonight, I'm keynoting a civil rights conference about fighting discrimination. Thank you for giving us our voices back. He replies, you always had your voice. I just removed the muzzle they paid you to wear. As the sun sets over Miami, Marcus reflects on the moral truth that guided this entire journey. Dignity denied anywhere diminishes dignity everywhere. But courage to confront injustice transforms systems for everyone. The presidential suite that was once denied to him is now the command center for an ongoing revolution in hospitality equality. Amanda thought she was protecting exclusivity. Instead, she triggered the most comprehensive industry reform in decades. One phone call. One refusal. One man who had the power to demand accountability and the courage to use it. Tap like if this story proves that one person with courage and resources can dismantle entire systems of discrimination. Show that dignity should never be negotiable and accountability should never be optional. Only people who accept racism as normal scroll past without engaging. 1 year ago, Amanda Pierce denied me room service and told me to find a more appropriate hotel. She thought she was protecting luxury standards. Instead, she exposed an industry secret, that hospitality has been using coded language and settlement money to hide discrimination for decades. The camera pans across the diverse, thriving lobby where discrimination once flourished. Amanda's 4-year prison sentence sends a message that coded discrimination carries real consequences. But the permanent transformation of an entire industry sends a bigger message, that systematic change is possible when we choose courage over comfort, justice over silence, and accountability over profit.